You get to make the decision.
Yeah.
When the application is filled, you and your family will sit around the dinner table. And because you've developed the rules around how this bank is going to be used, you guys get to make the decision on pulling out the funds versus keeping it in there. You don't have an investment committee at the credit union or some random executive at JP Morgan Chase who's going to be able to impact your life in the direction that you move in.
Welcome to the Share the Wealth Show, where minority professionals can learn to escape the racial wealth gap and catapult themselves into abundance. Your host, Nicole Pendergrass, grew her net worth from being negative to multiple six figures. Join her on her investigative mission to expose secret strategies of the wealthy so we can all have the tools needed to build the life and legacy we were created to possess. Now it's time for the show.
Hey guys, so we're back again. I need you to go back to the previous episode and listen to that first, and then come back and join us here today. You need to hear the whole conversation. There's so many nuggets. It's so juicy. Go back and listen to the first part.
Right? So that's something that we could also get excited about that we can't when we're talking about a Roth IRA or we're talking about a 529 plan. And just like you, Nicole, we had to kiss a lot of insurance agents to learn about this. And each one of them started asking us a whole bunch of things that weren't specific to what we were trying to do. And even when we pulled the trigger, the gentleman who helped us, right, he put too much of it toward the death benefit versus the cash value. And what Eunice was talking about is you must be in that position whereby you've had that conversation, and that conversation paints out the vision of where you want to be. And I would say after that conversation, there could be a go decision or a no go, right? And if it is a go, that policy should be structured such that you can maintain it. And I think that that's the reason why we get a bad rap around these things, is because that honest and fruitful conversation hasn't been had to understand how can you leverage this the best. And once you have that conversation, we didn't have that conversation with the gentleman. He just asked us a bunch of random questions that he probably asked everyone. But we knew exactly why we wanted to do the policy. Right. And now with Eunice having become licensed, she's having those conversations with the families who we're able to help and craft it specific to their needs.
I love that. There's really so much. Like, we could talk for another 5 hours on this topic because there's literally so much to uncover. I know one other thing too that I love about it is when you take a loan from yourself, it's not showing on your credit report. It's not telling, all your creditors, like, now your debt to income ratio is increased because you took out all this extra loan. Like, that doesn't show anywhere, right? And so now you could do what you need to do. And if you still, for some reason, let's say you max the cash value out of your policy, but you still need some extra financing from a bank or somewhere, and you do end up going to the bank for the rest of it, then they don't know that you have this other loan out. Like, it's not showing, or it's not affecting your credit score because now your credit score decreased because your debt to income ratio is too high. So that's just another thing that, like, I really like about it, because I don't know, I could never pay it back. It would never affect my credit score.
The thing is, you get to make the decision. When the application is filled, you and your family will sit around the dinner table. And because you've developed the rules around how this bank is going to be used, you guys get to make the decision on pulling out the funds versus keeping it in there. You don't have an investment committee at the credit union or some random executive at JP Morgan Chase who's going to be able to impact your life in the direction that you move in. Your family gets to do that. And when you start talking about generational wealth, legacy building, aren't those the types of concepts that you want to teach your children to know very early on? Because this is going to be almost like a habit. It's common to them that they're having these conversations.
Yeah,
And when you
families of
talk about,
oh, go ahead, Eunice.
sorry. And when you talk about how, when you pull out this money, the other thing also about it that I find interesting also is that when you put an application for FAFSA, you don't have to disclose this. So it doesn't work against you. So some people will say, well, when I fill out these forms, then it shows that I have 20,000 or 50,000 in my cash value. You don't have to disclose this. It's an insurance policy, right? So it doesn't in any way increase what you have out there, such that if you are looking for a loan, they're going to consider it and say, well, you already have this, so you can't qualify for that. There's just so much. You just need to fully understand it and find somebody who can help you navigate all these questions and things of that sort, to really see that there is absolutely no way that you should be there and not have something like this. I sometimes say to myself, oh, I wish we had found this earlier, but when we found out, we took a step, right? We didn't hesitate. We just knew that at this point, we just need to find somebody to have these conversations with. We started reading up just to understand how everything works, versus going back and saying, well, how come I've never heard about this? And then letting that limit you, right? There's a lot of people who will say, well, I've heard about this. Well, insurance is never great. Insurance people are all terrible. Yet, right now, most people have car insurance. Well, everybody has car. When you have a car, it has insurance, right? And most people don't think twice about it. They know that car is not going to be allowed out there on the roads without insurance. What more about your life? Like, how can you not value your life so much to the extent that you feel, well, maybe this is not for me? If a car deserves or is worth being insured, what about you, your life? You have to think about yourself and say, I am as valuable and I am as deserving to have some kind of insurance, or to have some kind of benefit that I can even enjoy right now, and make sure that even my kids or my beneficiaries in the end have something. Just as a side note, every time I sit and I see a GoFundMe being set up for someone who just passed, it literally breaks my heart, because I know that there are options. Not everybody, yes, is going to be able to, right? But there are options where sometimes people would say, well, if you had only put in an extra $100 just to make sure that you are all set, right? So, have those conversations, just so that you are not one of those people who are going to have to set up some kind of a GoFundMe because, somebody just passed and we didn't think about securing someone's life.
I love that. That's very true. The GoFundMes. Go ahead. The GoFundMes. That's something that definitely hits me as well, especially and I understand the cost of a funeral arrangement, is increasing, but the fact that, we don't have enough funds, even in our own savings or investments or wherever, we don't have any capital to pull from to be able to afford a funeral, right? That no one can take out a loan from a bank or from your own self to be able to afford a funeral, that you need money from the community to help do that, is just really sad in the state of where we are. And it's not just our community, there's other communities too, but That's why we have these conversations. That's why we have this podcast. We could share this kind of information. If you hear this episode and you don't take action or you don't implement anything, you don't even have a conversation. We're not telling you you have to open up a policy tomorrow. We're telling you to have a conversation.
Looking to build wealth with real estate? Are you all tapped out on YouTube University and ready to get help tailored to your specific situation and goals? Have you always known that you are a little different from the crowd, that you never liked following the status quo, and that you're just tired of living in mediocrity? You want to build wealth on your own terms outside of Wall Street? Well, then maybe the Microfamily Mavericks mentorship program can help with that. It's a community where I handhold you through the process of buying your first small commercial multifamily building, because not everyone is ready for 100 units out the gate. Why multifamily? Because it gives your rental income a hedge against vacancy. Imagine what happens when your single family rental tenant leaves, right? And why commercial 5+ units? Because you have much more control over increasing the building's value in the commercial space, and then in turn, increasing your own net worth. Starting small is a stepping stone to so much more, because then you can tap that equity and buy another building and another and another, and you get the point. So increasing your cash flow and your ability to be job optional along the way. It's all a part of the journey. So if you think big, but you want to start small, and if you know multifamily real estate is the way for you to open the door to building a life of freedom, abundance, and legacy, but you just need someone to guide you step by step, and you want to be surrounded by other people on the same journey, doing the same thing, then just click the link in the show notes to find out a little bit more about the Microfamily Mavericks, and I look forward to potentially seeing you on the inside. So now back to the show.
And if you want to sit on it and not have a conversation, and then things in life happen, or you don't want to set up your future in a way that has another benefit to it with this extra layer, then that's really just on you, right? Like, you're hearing the information, you're listening to this podcast, you have someone here to reach out to. You have multiple people here to reach out to, right? And to have the conversation, right? So in any case, I could go on and on and on about how important it is to stop procrastinating on implementing information that you hear, at least having the conversations to start understanding it better and seeing what that would look like specifically for you and your situation and your goals. If you don't have family goals, make some, or have the conversation, and maybe that helps you formulate what's possible and things you didn't even know existed. Right. So I just think all of that is very, just this whole conversation was eye-opening, very prudent information out there that we need to have to not just have life insurance to pass on to our heirs, but something that you can actually utilize now to help you in your finances, moving forward, however that looks.
Yeah.
So do either of you guys have anything else you want to add in? I do want to move us over to the last questions that I asked all of my guests, but I'll leave it for you if you want to put anything else in about life insurance or policies, or anything that we've discussed so far.
The last thing that I would say before we transition is towards the fact about having a conversation, right? And that conversation means that after that conversation, you have a choice, right? Life is about a choice. I could either choose to do it or I could choose not to do it. And I would tell those not to be faced with fear like we were initially. We were fearful that we got it right. Right. So we talked to all of these different insurance agents. Right. What we didn't know at that point in time is, even if we got it wrong, for those of you who are in real estate, you know about the 1031 exchange. There is something that we didn't know before we got into this initially. There's a 1035 exchange, such that if you get into a wrong type of policy, you don't have to cash it out to move somewhere else. You can do something called a 1035 exchange, which allows for you to move that money that you've already put into an existing policy into another policy if it's not fitting your goals and your needs.
Yeah.
So I was watching something the other day on TV, and it says, when you have to make progress, but something is big in front of you, how do you take on that challenge? And the response was left foot, right foot, breathe, repeat. That's how you take on these larger challenges in life, is that you're not taking it all at once. You're taking one step, left foot, right foot, breathe, and repeat. And knowing that they have people like us who are trying to help our community to grow their wealth, grow their legacy, and get past the myths that are there around insurance and how it can be leveraged. There's some truth about almost all kinds of tropes, but this is the one where you dig in and you get the facts. And I'll be happy to say to you today that we are still on a journey to learn and grow. We're now 4 or 5 years into this. There are things that we have picked up over the last 5 years, but we are constantly digging into this to learn more about it so that we can develop these other opportunities that we can leverage as we continue to grow our bank for our family. So back over to you, Nicole. I just wanted to get that in for your audience, is that don't be fearful about making the mistakes. There are ways to correct the mistakes if you do make them at the same time.
I love that. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. So before we move over into the next section, what I want to do is just highlight one of our reviewers on Apple Podcasts who left us a beautiful 5-star review. This is from Ram4218. Thank you, Ram. This is great show, informative and inspiring. Thank you for sharing the tools for wealth creation and painting the picture of how we can all take that next step. It's funny, I pulled up this review before we had this conversation, and this is exactly one of those episodes where we're just telling you to take the next step. One left foot, right foot, breathe, repeat. That's the next step. Have the conversations. And if you have not left us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts, please do so. It really helps us reach more people and get this message to the people who really need to hear it and to know that this type of information and these type of wealth building tools exist, and they can find it if you leave us an honest rating and review. So thank you so much, Ram4218, and hopefully I'll be reading your review next. Okay, so this next this is the episode. The next segment is called Digest with the Guest. And this is where I ask the same guests the questions. And I call it Digest with the Guest because our guest gives us so many juicy morsels that we need to just like slowly consume and really digest the information and really let it really infiltrate into our system, right? So, in any case, first question. Warren Buffett said that diversification is protection against ignorance. What do you take that to mean? And was that a good or a bad thing? What's your take on that?
My take on that is real simple. Diversification is good, but have you ever heard a jack of all trades is a master of none? Right? I would say you could diversify into real estate, right? But be focused only on multifamily. And what I say to that is that I am invested in multifamily in Texas, which diversifies me from the market in Tennessee. And I've invested in Indianapolis, which diversifies me from my investments when I was in Florida and South Carolina. But what I have done is I have developed an expertise around multifamily, and then I'm leveraging that. And at the same time, I'm diversified.
Well, I'll say, like anything in life, first, make sure you just understand first what you're getting into. It's one thing to aim or aspire to diversify, but you just have to have an understanding and knowledge of what you're doing. So for me, I believe that we are pretty much very diversified, where we do real estate. There's also stock market. There's own business. So there is a whole bunch of different things, but in all of them, it took time for us to pretty much understand the runnings before we actually got in. And even as we are in, there's the continuous education to just make sure that we are making the right moves at the right times.
Are you enjoying this episode? Then stop what you're doing right now. Head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It really helps our show get pushed to more people who are looking for the information that we're sharing here. We have to share the wealth. If you listen to us on YouTube, make sure you like the episode that you're listening to right now and subscribe to our channel. Then share the channel with somebody else. There are people out there looking for the information you're listening to right now. So make sure you share it with someone who you know needs it. Now, back to the show. Love it. What I heard there from both of you guys is basically just still understand what you're doing, whether you're going to diversify within one asset class or diversify among various asset classes. Having an understanding of what you're investing in is crucial. And that's something that Warren Buffett also does and says, how he only invests in what he understands, right? So that I think is important in protecting your empire as you're building it. So in the game of Monopoly, Boardwalk or Baltic, which are you buying like first, and why?
Well, it's a game of chance. I would say wherever you get to first, you buy it and then you put properties on top of it, right? But when you get to, I believe, what is it, Broadwalk, right? That's where you buy as much, and the penalties for landing on that gets more expensive. So I believe the analogy is you don't wait to buy real estate, you buy real estate and you wait. So I would answer that question to say the first one that I land on, I'm buying it. And then as I, go around and around, I'm putting houses and hotels on top of it, and I'm going from there.
And I think just to piggyback on that saying, it also aligns with the saying, it aligns with the saying that the opportunities that you lose are the ones that you don't take. So the first opportunity, go for it. You'll keep getting other opportunities because you can sit and wait and wait and wait and wait and never get that, right? But if you say, okay, I landed here, let me start here where I am and I'll keep moving, because you just don't know if you are ever going to land anywhere else where it's going to be more lucrative than where you are.
Oh, I love that. You gotta take advantage of those opportunities. Okay.
Yeah.
What does wealth mean to the both of you?
For me, wealth really means wealth is like the power to live my best life under my own circumstances. Because wealth for me, as much as there is the financial aspect of it, but there is also the time aspect of it, the ability to do what I want to do when I want to do it, the ability to build a strong family. So there is a whole lot that goes into wealth, not just the financial component of it. Of course, the finances enable you to be able to do some of these things, whether it's, being there for your kids, being there for family and family vacations and time. But ultimately, wealth for me is just all-rounded, all-rounded health-wise, financial-wise, time-wise, all those things.
I would just add freedom, time freedom, location freedom, financial freedom. Wealth equals freedom to be able to live life on your terms, how you choose.
Yep. And that's exactly the underlying current I was picking up from Eunice's answer too. It's having options, right? I love that. Okay. So this is a new, I don't know if I was doing this the last time, Lee, when you were on here, but we've started asking each guest to create a question for the next guest to answer. So it could be anything. It could be business, funny, serious, whatever you want. So I will ask you the question that the last guest asked, left for you, and give you some time to kind of think about a question for that you want to leave for the next guest.
Mhm.
So let's see, let me pull this up. The last guest asked, if you only had $1 and you had to make the biggest impact on the world, what would you do with it?
That's an interesting question.
So either way you want to go, if you guys want to answer that first, or if you want to think about a question for somebody else first, you could take it either order.
I think if I had $1 and I wanted to make a lasting impact, I would most likely give it away. And I say that because I think we live in a world where it's always I, and everybody wanting to gather for themselves. And we forget that for the world to be better, we just have to show compassion, grace, respect, love for one another. So sometimes it's about being able to give someone just so that the world is a little bit better for all of us.
And what I would do is I believe in the analogy that if you teach someone, well, if you give someone fish, they eat for one day. But if you could teach them how to invest that $1, they could live forever, right? So that's the analogy that I would use there. And the question that I would leave for the folks coming on behind us is, are you living the best version of yourself? If not, why?
And I guess if yes, how did you get to that?
And if no, why? What is the
Mhm.
barrier? What is the fear that is holding you back from taking on those risks to leverage those opportunities that are right in front of you? We're human beings, right? We like comfort, right? We don't like discomfort, but growth is being in a place of discomfort because we're leaving a place of comfort and moving into a place of unknown. So don't let those fears hold you back from realizing, actualizing your best self.
Amen to that. That I feel like that answer, that question, that's a whole other sermon in and of itself. Jeez Louise, man. Because that fear, uncomfortableness, that's real. And that is a real inhibitor for a lot of people to move forward, because everyone wants to, oh, I need to be comfortable. Well, then you don't really want to grow.
Yeah.
Like that's really what that is.
Growth
Yeah.
is over there. That's where
Oh,
the
yeah.
mojo happens. Hey, Nicole, I got to run for 1:30. I didn't know we were going to go this long.
I know. Actually, my last question, we're wrapping up right now. How can
Okay.
people get in contact with you guys? What's your contact information? I know I see the QR codes. If you're watching on YouTube, scan the QR codes. If you're listening, we will have whatever they say in the show notes.
LinkedIn, I'm Passive REI Pros. You could just search for Lee Johnson, but our website is valueinvestmentpartners.com. So www.valueinvestmentpartners.com. We still use Snell phone calls, 571-444-8474 if you want to give us a call. But if you follow us on LinkedIn, I think my wife has an Instagram page, Facebook. We're on all of those. Just search for Lee Johnson, Eunice Johnson, and you'll find us.
Perfect. All right. And we will put those links and the website in the show notes. Thank you everyone for listening in with us today. I know you got so many gems and juicy nuggets from everything that we talked about. Thank you so much, Lee and Eunice, for joining us. And I cannot wait for this message to get out to the world. All right.
Thank you, Nicole.
for
Thanks for having us.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Did you love this episode of Share the Wealth Show? Be sure to connect with Nicole by following her on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. If you picked up any of the gems that were dropped by today's guest, make sure you not only put them in your bag, but if you know of someone who would benefit from this information, don't keep it to yourself. Share the wealth. And make sure to leave us a rating and review. We'll see you for next week's episode. Subscribe so you'll be notified.